Masechet Ketubot, Daf Kof Heh, and with this stuff we begin the 13th and last perek of Masechet Ketubot. Mishnah. Shne Dayane Gezerot Hayu B'Yerushalayim, Admon veChanan ben Avi Shalom. There were two special judges. They were special in that they were able to issue decrees, so some kind of high-level judges, and their names were Admon and Hanan ben Avi Shalom. Hanan omer shene devarim, Admon omer shiv'a. We're going to quote 2 items in the name of Hanan and 7 items in the name of Admon. This will be in this and the following Mishnayot. Mi she'alach lemedinat hayam ve'ishto tobat mezonot, Hanan omer tishava basof velo tishava batechila. If a man goes away on a trip, and now his wife says, he didn't leave any money here for my sustenance, so he's asking for the whoever runs the estate to provide money for her. So Hanan says she does not have to provide. She does not have to swear up front that she is really owed this money. Instead, she only swears at the end. Later on, should they get divorced or he dies and she comes to collect her ketuvah, then she'll have to swear that she did not take any money from the ketubah payment, that any money she took was owed to her as regular sustenance. He didn't leave money there, and she also took money. She'll swear at the end. But she doesn't have to swear up front because she doesn't have to prove that she deserves to eat. That's Hanan's opinion. However, the sons of the Kohanim Gedolim is interesting because we don't often hear about them, but there seems to have been different groups of people with halachic knowledge and authority. Some rabbis, you notice Hanan and Admon are not called rabbis, likely because they were very early sages, and the sages started becoming called rabbi only with the destruction of Bet HaMikdash, Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai. But if you think of Hillel, Shammai, Shimon HaTzadik, none of them had the title rabbi. So these were early sages. And there was also this priestly group. And anyway, they thought, Amru tishabah batechila ubasof. Now we have to check. If we're going to take money from his estate without him there, then she should have to swear to make sure that she really deserves this money. And later on also, she will again have to swear when she collects her full ketubah. Amar Rabbi Dosa ben Harkinas kedivrehem. Rabbi Dosa agrees with the Kohanim Gedolim. Rabbi Dosa often followed the old opinion or Bet Shammai opinion, so it makes sense he's following this priestly opinion. Amar Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai yafeh amar Hanan lo tishaba ela basof. However, Rabbi Yochanan agrees with Hanan, who says that she does not have to swear when she collects the money, but rather only at the end. Okay, interesting Mishnah. Now we have a couple of challenges. Urminhi shelosha dayane gezelot hayu b'Yerushalayim, Admon ben Gadai, Hanan Misri veChanan ben Avi Shalom. We have another braita that says there were not 2 but 3 judges, and it doesn't call them of gezerot, those who issued decrees, but rather judges regarding cases of theft in Jerusalem. And Admon, that's the same. Then there's also Hanan HaMitzri, that's a different Hanan, besides the Hanan that's mentioned, Hanan ben Avi Shalom. So here we have an added judge, Hanan HaMitzri. So that's our question. Kashya telat atren, kashya gezerot agezelot. How come there's 3 here in this braita, not 2? And how come these are called judges of thieves, judges of thievery cases, and not of decrees? So then the question about the number, that's easy to answer. Those that were important to the Tana of the Mishnah, he mentioned, and those that were not important, he didn't mention. It doesn't necessarily mean that judge Hanan HaMitzri was less important, but rather his point was he wanted to transmit a few important halachot. And so he mentioned, these are 2 judges of decrees that I want to list their halachot to teach them. But the other Hanan was not important for his purposes. Ela gezerot kashya, but the harder question is, what kind of judges were they? Were they about decrees or judges over cases of robbery? Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, shayu gozrin gezerot al gezelot. So Nachman says, combine them. They would make decrees regarding thievery. Kedatanya, kitmaha neti'ah. Rabbi Yosef omer gozre gezerot shebirushalayim omrim neti'ah bat shenata sheteh chesef bat sheteh shanim arba kesef. Here's one example of a decree. If someone has an animal that severed a young plant in someone else's field, so he owes him damages. He stole this item, done still, but rather caused damage. And so those who make gezerot in Jerusalem said that there's a fixed price for this. If it's 1 year old, it's going to be 2 silver pieces. If it's 2 years old, the plant, then it's already further along in its growth, it's worth more. Then you have to pay 4 silver pieces. So they made these standard amounts. That way you wouldn't have to come to court and argue it's worth this much, it's worth that much. Maybe even these amounts are more than the actual usual amount because they wanted to give more of a deterrence so people would be more careful. So that would be an example of decrees regarding people damaging, taking, destroying was not theirs. Okay, Urminhi, another problem. Shelosha dayanei gezerot Yerushalayim, Admon, veHanan, veNachum. This Braita has Admon and Hanan, as we did before, but now it has a different person, Nachum. So this Braita contradicts the Braita above that had another Hanan Mitzri. Who's this Nachum? Amara Papa. Also, this is Gezerot, but that we solved. Man Tana Nachum Rabbi Natan. The one who said it's Nachum, that was the opinion of Rabbi Natan, but not everybody agrees. The Tanya Rabbi Natan Omer, Af Nachum Hamadi Megozere Gezerot Shebirushalayim Haya Velo Hodu Lo Chachamim. It was only his opinion of Rabbi Natan that Nachum was one of these judges, but the other sages said, no, he is not one of the judges, so therefore the Braita above reflects the other sages. Vetu leka, now we ask, wait, there's only 3 judges? Or maybe 4? That's it? והאמר רבי פנחס אמר רבי הושעיה 394 בתי דין היו בירושלים. Didn't Rabbi Hoshaya teach that there were 394 courts in Jerusalem, and each court had many people on it, so there must have been a lot of judges. כנגדן בתי כנסיות וכנגדן בתי מדרשות וכנגדן בתי סופרים, and there were that many synagogues and that many houses of study and that many elementary schools. Dayanin tuba'avu, so there were a lot of judges. V'chid kamrinan agozre gezerot kamrinan. But when in this Baraita and in the Mishnah, when it said there was only these 2, these 3, we're talking about these special judges that issued decrees. There were other judges that dealt with other things, but these were the special decree judges. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav Aseh, Gozrei gezerot shebirushalayim hayu notlin secharan 99 maneh mitrumat halishka. Okay, so now we're going to start a very important topic of how should judges get paid. It wouldn't be right for them to get paid by the people that they're judging, as we're going to see, because that could involve bribery. Instead, they would get their wages equaling 9,900 dinar from the temple treasury, from Trumat Halishka. Everybody would donate, and the part of that surplus they would go to paying the judges. Lo ratzu mosifin lahen. And Rav Aseh's statement continues and says, if the judges did not want that amount of money, wasn't good enough for them, then you'd have to pay them more. So now we ask about lo ratzu atu b'rishir ayaskinan. What do you mean lo ratzu? They could demand anything they want. If we determine that 9,900 is a standard amount, that's that one can live on that. So are we dealing with judges who are evil, that they're just going to say, wait, I want more, I'm going to demand more from the public funds? Rather, what we mean is that if it's insufficient for their needs, then even if they don't wish to receive higher wages, we add to their wages. In other words, we want to make sure that the judges are taken care of at their normal standard of living, whatever is appropriate for them. So if we see that the 9,900 is not sufficient, they can't pay their bills, then we add more to them, even if they don't want to. So it's actually the judges are very righteous. Karna hava shakel istera mizakai ve'istera mehaya ve'daen lehu dayana. Now we have an example of a sage Karna who did not take from public funds. Instead, he would collect istera, small coin, from the innocent party and from the guilty party. I mean, he didn't know who was innocent and guilty until the end, but he'd collect a small amount from both parties, an equal amount, and then he would agree to judge the case. We ask about Karna. How could he do that? Doesn't say don't take a bribe. If he's taking from the litigants themselves, isn't that considered a bribe? And if you'll answer, no, it's only a bribe when you don't take from both of them, because then you're going to bend the judgment towards one of them. But since he took an equal amount from both of them, so then he won't bend the judgment towards either of them. But our question, that we still have another question, even if he's not going to pervert the judgment because of the bribe, then is it then still in that case permitted to take a bribe? It is not. Why does the pasuk have to say not to take a bribe? If it's telling you that you should not make innocent someone who's guilty, or make guilty one who's innocent, we already know that it says do not bend the judgment. In other words, if the bribe is going to make you change your mind and you say, I know this guy's really guilty, but he gave me a bribe, I'll make him innocent. That you can't do. If you know that he's guilty and you're going to make him innocent, then you're not allowed to do that whether you take a bribe or not. So you don't need the pasuk v'shochad lo tikach to tell me that. Rather, the prohibition against bribery even applies to a case where I know he's innocent and he gives me a bribe. So then I might think that maybe I could take the bribe because it's not changing my mind. I knew he was innocent anyway. I already made my decision privately that he's innocent. It's clear, open shut case. So if it gives me a bribe, so maybe I could take it because it's not changing my mind. No, that's why the Torah says no. You can't even do it in that case because that's what the added pasuk v'shochad lo tikach. Therefore, back to Karna. Just because he's taking from both of them and therefore it's not going to change his judgment, it still should be prohibited because you just can't take money from litigants. So, the answer is it's only prohibited if one's taking it as a bribe, but Karna took it as a salary. That's an important difference. Even though he's taking money from both, if he's taking it out in the open and says, listen, this is my price for my time that I'm going to be spending on your case. Okay, so then everybody knows about it. It's okay. A bribe is usually like under the table. They don't necessarily know that each other gave it. And so that's underhanded. That's illegal. Okay, so he's taking it as a salary. Further question, but Torat Agra Mishare, even as a salary, is it permitted? Vehatenan Mishnan Kiddushin. Hanotel Sachar Ladun Dinav Betelin. If someone gets paid to judge, paid meaning by the litigants, then his judgments are null and void. So he can't do this. Answer is Hanemile Agar Dina, Karna Agar Betela Shakil. That's only true if one accepts payment for the judgment. You can't do that. You have to be, a judge has to either do it for free or has to get paid by public funds. He cannot get a salary for judging. But Karna did something else. He was receiving Sachar Batala. He was receiving compensation for not going to work that day. He has a job. And so now if he's not going to go to work, then he's not going to be able to, so then he's not going to make money from his job. So he says, listen, pay me in order to not go to work. So that's different. He's not actually getting a salary for judging. He's happy to judge for free as long as he's compensated for his loss of unemployment. All right, this is a very important halacha. It applies to other things also, like doctors, teachers of Torah, people who are supposed to do things l'shem shamayim and are not allowed to receive money for them, but sometimes they do need to receive money, and so we use also this reasoning that they're not being paid for this service. They would help you heal people for free. They're teaching Torah because they love Torah, but that time they won't be able to work otherwise, so we're paying them just for not going to work. Okay, hold on, even that, is it permitted to give compensation for not going to work? And for a judge, there's another statement of Braita that says it doesn't look nice. It's ugly for a judge to take a salary to judge. But his judgment is and nevertheless valid. Even though it's not a nice thing to do, it is valid. So what is this Braita talking about? If he actually is receiving a salary directly for judging, then his judgment is his judgment a judgment at all? We said above it, it's not. In that case, it would be null and void. So it can't be talking about that case. Rather, this Braita, rather, it's talking about compensation for not going to work, and it says this is an ugly thing to do. So how could a karna do that? Even if his judgments would be valid, still, it's not proper to act in such a way. The answer is Hanemile betela de la muchecha, karna betela de muchecha hava shakil tava atahe be'ambara dechamra v'yahabe lezuza. Okay, this problem that's an ugly thing to do is only if it's not self-evident, if it's not evident that he is receiving compensation for not going to work. Like if the guy, it's not clear what his job is anyway, and is he really taking this amount of time if he spends 2 hours judging this case? Or is that exactly 2 hours that he's losing his wages for? If it's not really clear, then it's an ugly thing to do. But for Karna, it was clear it was a one-to-one relationship because his job was a wine taster. He would go to the wine storage places and taste the wine from the casks to see, is it going to go sour? Should we open it right away? Should they store it for longer? So for every job that he misses out, he would have gotten a dinar for that if he's not spending those 2 hours going to check out wine in those places. So that's a certain number of dinarim he could have made. So that is what he's asking for. So if someone is really getting paid, by the hour or by the job, and they can calculate, look, I'm missing 3 jobs because I'm judging your case, then it's permitted because it's clear that he's getting paid just not to go to work. But if someone's job is not so clear cut, then it would be an ugly thing. A case, a similar case where it would be permitted is Rav Huna. When a case would come before him, he would say, listen, I'll judge your case as long as you, the litigants, provide a person who can go draw water for me to irrigate the fields, because that's what I was going to do today, and I'm fine to spend time judging your case as long as you provide for the job that I was going to do. That's permitted. Adam chash be'enav noten mamon l'rofeh safek mitzrapeh safek eno mitzrapeh. And now we're going to talk about how terrible taking a bribe is. Look how blind are people who take bribes. A person who has a problem with his eye, has some pain, he would pay money to a doctor, and he's never sure if the doctor will heal him or not, but he's willing to pay just for the possibility of being healed. And yet, for someone who takes a bribe, they are taking even a small amount is still considered a bribe, the smallest denomination, but they for sure cause themselves blindness. So if someone would pay just for the possibility of getting their sight better, why would a person take a tiny amount for the definite consequence of becoming blind? Because the pasuk says, right, bribery surely blinds a person of sight. Bribes even blind the eyes of a wise, all the more so if someone is foolish. They didn't have much wisdom to begin with, so the bribe is going to totally blind them. And if it perverts the words of righteous who are trying to get it right, all the more so it will pervert the statements of the wicked who are perverted to begin with. Now we ask, what is this Braita talking about? If they're already foolish or wicked, can they be judges? Why do we have to talk about them getting bribes? They're not going to be judges in the first place. Rather, what the pasuk is saying is that that blindness will blind even a person who's very wise. If he takes bribes, he will not die before he will become foolish, right? So yeah, a foolish person is not going to become a judge in the first place. But this is part of the punishment, is that the wise person will actually lose his wisdom and become foolish by taking bribes. And similarly, if someone is 100% righteous and then he takes a bribe, he will, before he dies, he will lose his mind. He will become foolish. And so bribery is not going to it's not just going to affect this one case and one outcome, but the person will be okay. The person will be permanently demented because of it. Pasuk in Mishle that says a king by justice establishes the land. One who takes gifts overthrows it. What is this pasuk referring to? If they're both talking about judges. If a judge is like a king, the king doesn't need anything. Can't bribe a king. What are you going to give him? He already owns more than everything. So if a judge is like that and he says, I don't need anything, I'm never going to take bribes, then that judge is a pillar of the world. But if the judge is like a kohen, they didn't have land, they went from granary to granary saying, can you give me the terumah, give it to me? So they're almost like beggars, and always taking things from others. That a judge who is like that, a judge is always going around saying, oh, you pay me and I'll judge your case, and accepting bribes, seeking them even, and seeking payment for judging, that person destroys the land. Amar Abba bar Shela, Hai Dayana de She'elata, Pasul Lemedan Dina. A judge who borrows items from other people. Okay, he's not taking bribes, he's only borrowing someone's lawnmower. No, you borrowed someone's hammer. You cannot be a judge anymore because you accepted benefit from them. So if you're a borrower, don't be a judge. But that's only talking about a person who doesn't have items that he lends out also. If a person borrows and lends out, normally, everybody does, right? You always have to borrow some eggs, you lend out some sugar, so then it equals out. And that person is okay to be a judge. Hold on, how could you say that? Rava, he borrowed items from the house of this Bar Merion, even though they never borrowed from him. There was only one way, so shouldn't that be prohibited for Rava then to be a judge? No, in that case, Rava was actually doing them a favor by borrowing from them, because Rava himself was important and wealthy. Him having a relationship with this Bar Merion and borrowing from them actually raised the standing of Bar Merion in the community. So that if anything, Rava was giving them more than he was receiving. Marava, my tamad shochada. Now we're going to explain what is the reason why taking a bribe is no good. Kevan dekabel shochada mine ikareba ledaate legabe v'have kigufe ven adam ro'eh choba le'atzmo. Because once a person takes a bribe from someone else, he feels close to him, almost, even like himself. He's like, oh, I'm like we're one. And a person does not see the bad in himself, right? It's very hard for a person to see his own flaws. And when he takes a bribe from someone, he feels very close to that person, so close that just like he doesn't see flaws in himself, he won't see flaws in this litigant who gave him money. My shochad, what's the etymology of the word shochad? Shehu chad, a folk etymology, that he becomes like one with that litigant. That's no good. He has to remain objective, independent. Amara papa, lo ledun inish dina leman derachem le, v'lo leman desaneh le. You should not be a judge for someone who you love or for someone who you hate. Derachem le lachazeh le choba, desaneh le lachazeh le zechuta. If it's someone who you really love, then you never it's going to be hard to find fault in the person. If it's someone you hate, then you won't be able to find any merit in the person. So therefore, that judge should recuse himself from being a judge to a good friend or a terrible enemy. Amar Abaye, Haisu Rabbanan Rachamin le bnei mata, la mishum dema ale tefe, el mishum de la mochach lehu b'milei dishmaya. Abaye, now we're talking about loving and hating people. This Torah scholar who is in a town and all the people of the town love him. Oh, don't think because he's a great sage, so look how successful he is, that everybody and all the congregants love him. No, it's the opposite. It means that this rabbi is not reproving the people in heavenly matters sufficiently. They love him because he's easygoing, and the people, even if they do wrong things, he doesn't tell them anything. That's why they love him. So it's the opposite. If there's some healthy tension that the rabbis feel, some fear, some awe, that the rabbi corrects them, then it's better. So people loving the rabbi isn't necessarily a good sign. So Rava himself says, at first, the people of Mechoza, he was the rabbi in Mechoza, he says, all people of the town, they love me. So he was happy. Once I became a judge in the town, then I saw that some hate him, some love him, right? And must be because those who he said were innocent, they loved him. Those he said were guilty, hated him. So, it's not because he is in himself great and lovable, but it just depends on what the outcome is for the people. But then, but then I saw some people come for judgment repeatedly, and one day I could declare them guilty, another day innocent. And so their loving or hating me does not actually depend on whether I say they're innocent or guilty, but rather, like the winds change, if they love me, they all love me, and then sometimes they hate me, and they all hate me. This is just like a trend that they all talk to each other, and I think the point is that it's not worth bothering to please everyone. You can't please everyone all the time. You do what's right, and hopefully people will appreciate it. Tenor Rabbanan, v'shochad lo tikach eno sarich lomar shochad mamon, ela afilu shochad devarim nameh asur. Okay, when the pasuk says, do not take a bribe, it's not only talking about bribery of money, even a bribery of words or actions, as we're going to see. Medeloketi besa lo tikach. Since the pasuk does not say don't take betza, betza would mean profit, would be only money. But the word shochad is more is broader, more general, and includes not only a cash payment, but any type of benefit that a litigant may give a judge is prohibited and disqualifies the judge. Ki had Shmuel hava avad b'mavra. For example, Shemuel was going over a ferry, and there was someone there who put out his hand to give a hand to Shemuel to cross on to the ferry. Amale, my abiditech, Shemuel esem. What are you doing here? What's your business? Amale, dinaitli. I'm coming because I have a judgment, and you're going to be the judge. Amale, pasir nalach ledina. Shemuel says, sorry, now I'm disqualified because you did me a favor and you lent me a hand to cross over onto the ferry. Now I cannot, even though he didn't pay him anything, it was just a nice, polite thing that you do for anyone. Shemuel says, no, now I feel closer, a connection to you. I feel thankful that you did me this favor, so I have to recuse myself. Yateb v'kadain dina parach gadfa areshe. Amemar, similar story, was sitting, judging a case. A feather floated, landed on his head. Just a little feather. Atahu gabra shakle. Some guy came and took the feather out of his hair. Amale maya biditich. So Amemar says, oh, what are you doing here? Amale dinaitli. I have a judgment. I'm going to come and present a case before you. Amale pasina lach ledina. Oh, so now I am disqualified to you from judging your case because you did me even this tiny favor. I already am going to feel slightly favorable towards you, so I can't be the judge. Morukva hava shedi ruka kame. Morukva, one time he was the exilarch, so very important person, and he also acted as a judge. And so one time there was some spit on the floor in front of him. Some guy saw that and he covered it over in order that Morukva would not have to see it and be disgusted by it. A very small favor. Morukva said, well, what are you doing here? I have a judgment to present to you. Now I am disqualified as a judge. Okay. Rabbi Yishmael ben Rabbi Yosef hava ragil ariseh dehava maitele kol ma'aleh shabeta kanta defere. Another example is Rabbi Ishmael. He had a sharecropper who would bring him a basket of fruit every Friday afternoon before Shabbat. So in other words, Rabbi Ishmael owns the field, and the sharecropper works the field, and he pays his rent with a basket of fruit. So the basket of fruit is not a gift. This is payment that is owed to Rabbi Ishmael. One time he came, instead of on Friday, the sharecropper came and brought the fruit on Thursday. So how come you brought it now a day earlier? So the sharecropper says, I have judgment. I said, while I'm on the way, I'm coming to you to judge a case. I may as well bring the fruit and save myself a trip. And so the Ishmael, number one, he did not accept the basket of fruit because it's kind of a bribe. Now, even though it's really not a bribe, because Rabbi Ishmael owns that fruit. This is payment that is due to Rabbi Ishmael. He's just paying the rent. But just the fact that he's paying it a day early, that is itself a tiny benefit, and therefore Rabbi Ishmael did not accept it, and he also disqualified himself from being the judge. Oteb Zuza de Rabbanan. Now Rabbi Ishmael instead says, listen, I'm recusing myself. Here's a couple of my colleagues, and they will judge the case for you. And they judged the sharecropper's case, so that was fine. And so while Rabbi Ishmael was coming and going, and he knew about the case, he heard what it was, he wasn't judging it, but he found himself thinking about the case and saying, oh, my sharecropper, my tenant, if he wants, he could claim this or he could claim that. He's thinking all kinds of ways in which the sharecropper could win the case. And so he realizes that even though he didn't take the bribe and he recused himself, he shows affinity towards his sharecropper because of this small act that he brought the fruit one day earlier. So amarti pach nafsham shemekabele shochad mani shelo natarti vim natarti sheli natarti kach mekabele shochad al hakaba v'chama. And so now he realized how important it is not to take a bribe. So he said, bless the souls, cursed is anyone who takes a bribe. Me, look at me, I didn't take it. And even if I took it, it's mine. It belongs to me. It's my rent, my payment. And even so, I'm already thinking for his favor. All the more so, someone who actually takes a bribe, there's no way they can be objective and just. Rabbi Ishmael bar Elisha Aitelehu Gabra Reshit Agez. Similar story about Rabbi Ishmael. This is a different Bishmael, but about Elisha, who, a certain person, he was a Kohen. And so this person would bring him the first shearings. When they shear the sheep, one like just like you give Bikurim and firstborn, so too the first shearing, a certain percentage you give to a Kohen. So this person would always find a Bishmael and like to give it to him. Amar le, you can give it to any Kohen. Amar le mehechan at, Bishmael says, where are you from? Amar le metuchpalan, I'm from this cave, some far out place. Mehatam lacha lahava Kohen milimet vale, and so Bishmael is surprised, from there till here, there's no other Kohen on the way that you could have given this shearing to. So this sounds like it's actually the first time that this person came to the Bishmael, but he traveled far with the shearings in his head, specifically to find the Bishmael to give it to him. And the Bishmael's like, why'd you travel so far? Why don't you give it to a local Kohen? This is because I have a case to present before you, and so I figured, while I'm coming here anyway, I may as well give you the shearings. So Bishmael, sorry, and now I'm disqualified because you offered me a bribe. And he also would not accept the shearings from him. Okay. So Bishmael instead said, here's some of my colleagues, and you can present the case to them. So he had the same reaction while he's walking here and there, and he knows about the case. He says, oh, you know what, if I were him, if I were this guy, I could claim this, I could claim that on his behalf. And so he realized that he is showing favor to the guy who offered him the shearing. So he says, blasted is anyone who takes bribes. Look at me, I didn't take the shearings, and even if I took it, it's okay. It belongs to me as a Kohen, right? I have a right to take them. So it really would not be a bribe. So all the more so, someone, and already I'm thinking on giving him favor, so all the more so, someone who actually takes a bribe would be really prohibited and totally skews one's judgment. Rav Anan, aiti lehahu gabra kanta de gile dane de be gile. Some guy brought to Rav Anan a little basket of fish. Amale, okay, what are you doing here? Amale, dinaitli, I have a case to present before you. Lakabil mine, amale, pasina lach, le dinah. Rav Anan did not accept the fish. It's like a bribe. And he said, I am disqualified. I will not see your case. So the guy said, listen, I don't need your judgment. It's okay. I'll go to someone else. But still, I want you to accept this gift that I'm giving you of the fish. So that you, the master, the rabbi, do not prevent me from giving bikurim. So actually giving this basket of small fish is called bikurim. How do we know that? The Tanya ve'ish ba mibal shelisha vayabe leish ha'elohim lechem ubikurim. Lechem bikurim, asrim lechem seorim vecharmel besiklono. Vechi Elisha ochel bikurim ava, ela lomar lach kol hamevi doron tamid chacham ki'ilu makri bikurim. We can see that even though there weren't official bikurim, first fruit that you bring to the Kohanim, to the Bet HaMikdash, we see that other gifts can also be called bikurim, like this man who came from Baal Shilisha, and he brought to Elisha a bread of first fruit, 20 loaves. And now Elisha, he did not have first fruit. He was not a Kohen, so these were not actually bikurim, but rather calls it bikurim to teach that anyone who brings a gift to a great sage, it's like he brings bikurim. Okay, this is a nice statement as a tangent that even though we can't bring bikurim nowadays, the rabbis here are talking about when the Bet HaMikdash is destroyed, but just like other korbanot and libations and all kinds of things, even though we don't have Bet HaMikdash, we do other things that are like it, that are a replacement for it, so we don't feel so bad that we'd have it. So this is yet another example I once wrote an article collecting examples like this, so I have to add this example to that article of things that we can do even today, even though we can't do the official Bet HaMikdash offerings. Amalek kabule laba'in and ikabel. Hashtad amatli ta'ama mekabel. Now Rav Anan says, listen, I don't want to take it from you because it was offered to me together with the request to give a judgment, so normally I would recuse myself and refuse it, but now that you explain the reason for it, it's a very nice reason, so I'll accept it from you. I'm still not going to be the judge, so it's not taking a bribe. שדרה לקמד רב נחמן, שלח להני דייני מור להי גברה, תענה ענן פסיל נעלה לדינה. Okay, so he accepted the gift, and then Rav Anan, who accepted the gift, sent the guy to Rav Nachman with a letter, and he asked his colleague, Rav Anan asked his colleague Rav Nachman, listen, can you please judge this man's case, because I'm disqualified from the case. He didn't explain in the letter why he's disqualified. Amar mideshalach li hachish ma'amina de karibehu. Rav Nachman received a letter, and he assumed that the reason why Rav Anan is disqualified is because he's a relative, and so now Rav Nachman is going to show slight favoritism to this guy because he's a relative of Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman was, in the meantime, dealing with a case involving orphans. Amar, hay aseh v'hay aseh. Aseh d'chvod Torah adif. I says, listen, there's a positive commandment for me to judge this case or that case. So which one should I do first? Well, kavod Torah. I want to give honor to Rav Anan, and this is a family member of Rav Anan. So they are deserving of the honor of Torah. So I'm going to judge them first. And so he set aside the judgment of the orphans, and he took the case from this guy who was the one who offered the basket of fish. But then, once the litigant, the other litigant, not the one who had the basket of fish, saw that Rav Nachman is giving honor to him as, from a family of a great sage, so he saw that, he says, I'm not getting a fair judgment, and as he's trying to make his claim, his mouth was closed. He couldn't get the words out because he felt so nervous because he saw Rav Nachman was not going to be fair to him. Rav Anan, now, in the meantime, see, Rav Anan did something not 100% because he should have explained that the reason why I'm disqualified is because he offered me a gift. I didn't take it, and he didn't mean it that way, but nevertheless, I disqualify myself, right? And by leaving out that reason, he suggested that he is a relative, and so Rav Nachman now gave him some favoritism, even though it's kind of indirect and all that. It still was some favoritism and not proper. So Rav Anan gets a consequence, which is that normally Eliyahu Hanavi used to come to Rav Anan and teach him Seder Eliyahu. There's a midrash, we have it now called Tanah de Eliyahu. He would teach them these teachings. But once Rav Anan did this and allowed this miscarriage of justice by sending this litigant to Rav Nachman with a letter of recommendation that, through its omission of the reason, suggested that he should caused him to get preferential treatment, this is an indirect bribe. Nevertheless, it caused an injustice. So Eliyahu Navi would not come to him anymore. So Rav Anan repented, fasted, prayed. Eliyahu did come back. But Eliyahu, when he first came, would scare him. He came back, but scare him in a frightening way. So Rav Anan, to hide himself from being scared, made a box, and he sat in the box while he studied the rest of this midrash until he extracted from Eliyahu all of his teachings. And this is why people call this midrash has two parts, and part of it is Seder Eliyahu Rabbah, the great part of it. That's the part that he learned beforehand when he was able to sit and learn the whole thing. And the second part is called Zutah. Kala, the minor section of Seder Eliyahu, where he's in a box and he's scared, and he had to learn it more quickly, not with the same breadth and depth as the first half. So you see, as a consequence of this, even indirect negligence of not writing the letter of recommendation properly, even though he recused himself and all that, even that has a consequence. This type of punishment, and it also is an origin for why we have these two different works with attributed to Eliyahu with two different names. I should point out that if you do go to a Judaic bookstore and buy a work called Tanad Eliyahu, which is available in Hebrew, it's also an English translation. This work is most likely not what the Talmud originally is referring to, because this work contains some anti-Karaite polemics, and so it definitely has later layers added to it from as late as the 10th century. Nevertheless, this work may very well, probably does, have in it parts of this original Tanad Eliyahu that goes back to the time of Rav Anan during the times of the Amoraim. So we have a fantastic story about the origins of this significant midrash and such great important lessons of justice. Baruch Adonai Olam, Amen ve'amen.